Back in action on Orange and Blue today. What off season? There is none. Our position previews begin. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. And Mason, it's going to be nice to step through the entire roster. Before we jump into the cornerbacks today, this is our first position preview show, and I think it's important to note this roster has unproven talent, but they've got talent, and it's going to be fun chopping it up about all these guys.
Yeah, and if you want evidence of how that unproven talent can come in and very quickly establish itself, look at Jaquan McMillan last year stepping in at nickelback as after K'Wan Williams got hurt. That was a real question mark. K'Wan Williams, one of the most reliable slot cornerbacks in the league, unfortunately, in his years with the Broncos, couldn't stay healthy very often. Very quickly, Jaquan McMillan put a lot of concerns at ease, and to where now we're talking about him being one of the best slot/nickel cornerbacks in the NFL. And watching him out there at OTAs and minicamp, it's not a position you're worried about anymore. You're maybe worried about the depth there still, but you're not worried about Jaquan. He's a plus player. And so I bring him up to say, just because you have some unknowns here doesn't mean you don't have somebody who can be effective. You've got basically a CB2, 3 bites of the apple that we're going to get into here. All you need is one of them to pay off.
Well, and it's nice to note, and we're going to talk about Pat Surtain to kick things off because he's been fantastic. But of your 3 corner positions, because slot corner is basically a starter now, you've got 2 of them. You've got them on lockdown, and you've got really, really great options. Obviously, PS2 being the best. But here's the thing, Mace. With a better pass rush and an offense that actually puts pressure on an opponent, because in years past, not just last year, but in years past with this team, the offense couldn't do anything. So opponents, remember Brady Belichick would come in here. We don't have to do anything. They can't score. Well, now a better run offense that scores more points, a better pass rush from a more creative Vance Joseph, who, yes, is on the hot seat. Like now, Surtain could be getting his hands on those balls that are usually avoided because that's Pat Surtain. What I'm saying in a long-winded way, shocker, Mace, we have yet to see the best from Pat Surtain. Think about that.
Well, we haven't seen a season that looks like a Champ Bailey season. Now, that being said, I don't think we're going to see anything quite like that because interception rates league-wide are down compared to the mid-2000s. So, Champ Bailey gets, 10 interceptions in a year? That's not happening for Pat Surtain.
No.
But are there enough balls coming his way to where he can get 5 and maybe he can take 2 of them to the house? Yes.
Yeah, that's a possibility. And that pass rush is going to help him out. It's Russian cover, not a movie from the 80s. Not Spies Like Us, the offshoot, but it's Russian cover. Like the better rush leads to better coverage. And the reason why interception numbers are down, one of the reasons, Mace, is that it's dink and dunk league.
Yeah.
It's short and intermediate league. Surtain will adjust, and I think Jim Leonard will adjust with this team, and that again could lead to better Pat Surtain.
Exactly. And I think one thing that Jim Leonard's working on with Pat Surtain as well is on leadership as well. So it's not just technical teaching, it's how to be a better leader for the group and also be true to his own personality. Now, what Jim said is that Pat Surtain is a type who's going to lead more by example, and he's going to lead by kind of one-on-one conversations. He's not the guy who's going to stand up in front of the whole locker room and give a speech, but leadership comes in different ways. And one of the things I chatted with Pat about last month is he feels comfortable that what he's being asked to do as a leader fits in with what he's comfortable doing personality-wise. You have to be authentic as a leader. You can't be somebody other than yourself. And I think the Broncos and how they're working with him and what Pat himself knows he has to do in the wake of Justin Simmons being released, he knows he's got to kind of take it over, but he's got to do it in his own way.
Yep. Got to be your own man, be your own person, and then get out there, compete, and win. Pat Surtain, lockdown. Jaquan McMillan, locked down. We know those two positions are going to be fantastically played. We just don't know who CB2 is. Now, it could and perhaps even should be Riley Moss. As they wait last year, Mace, I still get bitter and think, why didn't you just play him more last year? So he is real rookie tendencies, rookie qualities. But this offseason, if you didn't know, let's say you just showed up to Broncos camp and you watch this defense, it's not like Moss's play stood out like a turd in a punch bowl, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like, oh, there's the rookie. There's the young guy. Moss looked good this offseason.
He did. And, some of it, hey, he has a pass breakup that hits him in the chest. He's got a nice reach out. He's, basically obstructing the target without touching the target. By the way, the whole thing, you can face guard as long as you don't make contact, right? And so if you turn, you put your body up as an obstruction, and this is where he uses his size, he uses his reach, and he can use it to his advantage. If you do that, it's got to be a perfect throw. And sometimes this is what you're doing, is using your body and also using the geometry of the field, right? What is it that Tom McMahon used to say? The best defender in the world was the sideline.
Yes.
One thing I like is watching Riley Moss when he's working outside. He's working against a receiver who's trying to run down the edge of the field. I like the way Moss is steering the defender over to the sideline and limiting the window over there to make a play. So that's the sort of thing that shows you that Moss, by doing that at an NFL level, he's growing mentally, and that's going to allow him to take advantage of what he has physically.
Yes. In bulldogging or steer wrestling, Mace, I'll go a little country on you today. That's what we call hazing. He's going to haze over so that you're closer to that defender that is always right, the sideline. You're closer to that defender, and I'm hazing you that way. I'm getting you in position so that you can't make a play. You just run out of real estate, basically. And Sean Payton had some good things to say about Riley Moss. Here's Coach on the second-year player.
Well, he's smart. I'd say you feel his length at corner. When I say that, just even on that play, it's a tougher play to make if you're a shorter corner. So you feel his length. He's got real good transitional skills, and I think he's smart. So he's picking up the technique, and he's got versatility outside in. But we've got good competition there.
Can't coach length.
No. Can't coach length and can't coach speed. One of the things when I chatted with Riley Moss last month is, you've got a lot of speed in the receiver room, but he's got a lot of speed too. Sometimes you have to kind of be mindful of that as a player to know that, hey, just because they're throwing a lot at you in terms of speed and physicality, because it's a big receiver group that's got speed to it. Well, Riley Moss has got the attributes to handle that. And that makes him a really tough matchup for teams that go big at wide receiver, because if you have him and Pat Surtain, if those are you two cornerbacks, that's a lot of reach, a lot of length, and a lot of speed.
Yep.
That's tough to go against. And then if Jaquan locks down the slot, you have three kind of perfect physical types there for handling those roles.
Yes. Size, length, and speed sounds pretty good. And the smarts are what really stands out as well. Again, this team for years had trouble in the draft because they weren't drafting smart players. They've corrected that, not just the last couple of years, but there's quite a collection of heady players. Riley Moss is one of those players. Going to compete with Damari Mathis. And we'll see. Well, also Levi Wallace. I think we need to include Levi in this. He's the in case of emergency break glass.
Right. It's unfortunate to say this, but if Levi Wallace wins the job, it means probably that neither one of these two cornerbacks that you took in the middle rounds the last couple of years panned out. Of course, Levi Wallace comes over from Pittsburgh And Buffalo before that. Last year, Levi Wallace allowed a 93.7 passer rating when targeted, and he was targeted 75 times according to Sport Radar. So Levi Wallace is one of those guys you look out there. He's fine. He's a better version of Fabian Moreau. Moreau got off to a good start and then really tailed off. I think Levi Wallace is definitely more solid. And here's the thing, though. If Mathis and Moss both do well, you still need a Levi Wallace, because the other thing about corner is you're not going through the season with your same trio all year. You're going to have injuries at some point. Cornerback, it's a position where you need to be ideally 5 deep. Beyond that, yeah, you're just kind of holding your breath. But if you can go 5 deep with quality, you're in good shape. Levi Wallace, a solid player, he's a good part of that 5. The question is, are Damari Mathis and Riley Moss going to be reliable enough to where you like them as part of that group? That's the thing. If both Mathis and Moss work out and you have Wallace in there, you feel great about your starters and you feel great about your depth. If Wallace is starting, that means you're nervous about your depth.
Yeah, and there's something a little bit off, but there's an X factor that we get to talk about. And of all the draft picks this year, Mace, and I'm not going to include the guard that I can't pronounce his name. Of all the draft picks this year, Chris Abrams-Drain was probably my least favorite. And that doesn't mean I'm right or whatever. It just means like, okay, I wasn't as hyped up as I was about a Jonah Ellis or Troy Franklin. Tremendous value. Are you kidding me? And even Payton told us last month at minicamp, like, hey, yeah, 2nd round grade on Troy Franklin. So did I. Yeah. So when we talk about Chris Abrams-Drain, for me, it's that lack of size. Is he feisty? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But he can get pushed around and he can get moved off his spot. And if you're talking about contested catches, all right, there's a possibility he's in this conversation, but he's in that depth conversation for damn sure. Chris Abrams-Drain hasn't really stood out other than wearing Justin Simmons' number.
Looks weird.
It does.
Looks weird on a corner.
Right.
We got used to something else.
Don't like it.
Now, it's funny. You talk about the draft grades. You had Troy Franklin with an R2 grade. So did Sean Payton and the Broncos. They had Chris Abrams-Drain as a 3rd round grade, they said.
Ooh.
You didn't have him that way, I can tell.
No, I had 6th round grade on him.
The feistiness is sort of the defining characteristic, because you think about him going toe-to-toe with some of those big receivers in the SEC, like at LSU, et cetera. So that's the part that's a part that you're intrigued by. I think he probably profiles as a slot corner more than somebody on the outside. Then the question becomes, do you end up taking advantage of that? Another guy to keep your eye on is Art Green, who, of course, was on the practice squad all last year out of the University of Houston, undrafted last year. Length. He's got length. He's got speed for days. And this is where special teams comes into the equation, because maybe you're looking for guys who have a bit more length, a bit more size to go along with the speed. That's where Art Green could be a plus player. If Art Green makes the team, it probably is because he stood out in the new kickoff coverage kickoff play that we're seeing is causing all sorts of plans to be altered by special teams coordinators around the NFL.
Yeah. What's that do for, and he's more of a returner, and we've seen him out there, Tremont Smith. Like, again, the depth is there. They have depth, and Tremont's got speed.
And another thing that means special teams comes into play, especially if you've got more kickoff plays. So in terms of roster construction, do you have to prioritize that? So we talk about the 5 deep there at corner, but it may not necessarily mean keeping the 5 best corners or the 6 best corners, because you have to consider that you're gonna go from, I think it's, as Sean Payton's talked about this, you go from maybe 11 special teams plays a game that are important and relevant to like 18 or 19 because all of a sudden the kickoffs, they're not going through the end zone. They're becoming key plays. And so someone like Tremon Smith, who's proven on special teams, someone like Art Green, who appears to be maybe making his way into a role on special teams, do they have an advantage over, say, if whichever of Damari Mathis, Levi Wallace, Riley Moss is your CB5, right? Like, it may not be the six best cornerbacks who make the team. It may be the four best plus the two that are best on special teams.
Right. And the special teams that come into play, especially, let's say, if Marvin Mims is going to have a larger role on offense and maybe a lesser role on special teams, that's where Tremon Smith would come in. So you've got decisions after decisions after decisions, but we just ran through the corners. They have talent. It's unproven. We don't know about Riley Moss. We don't know about Chris Abrams-Drain. We know about Jaquan. We know about Surtain. But like, this group of corners has more talent than people think. So just keep an eye on them as they're out there at training camp later this month.
Yeah, keep an eye. And we talked about it when we did the position previews as perhaps the number one position battle to watch. There's another reason why you want to watch it. It's because we're talking about Damari Mathis and Riley Moss being middle round picks, and Riley Moss being a guy that you trade up, you sacrificed a future third round pick that ended up being in 2024 to move up and get him. So it's a little bit of a referendum on the personnel side as well.
Right. So make it right. Make it so, number one. The first position preview, rare Star Trek reference. The first position preview that we've done is corner, but we're just getting started, Mace, as we'll talk safety on tomorrow's show. But before we're out of here, how can people help us out on YouTube?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
and hit that notification bell
so that you
never miss a vid.
That's right. He's Andrew Mason. Follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's BFD. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty.